Crooklyn cast, 1994 versus 2026. Then and now, what they look like. 32 years later. You remember Crooklyn as a warm childhood memory, bikes on Brooklyn streets, summer, laughter, family noise. But what if we told you that behind those familiar faces were lives shaped by illness, sacrifice, rejection, and survival that Hollywood never showed you? 32 years have passed, and some of the cast thrived, some vanished quietly, and some were taken far too soon. This isn't just a then and now video, it's a reckoning with time, truth, and Black legacy. Stay with us until the end, share your thoughts, and subscribe to Legends of Black Excellence for stories Hollywood rarely finishes telling. Zelda Harris. Zelda Harris entered American cinema not as a manufactured child star, but as a presence that felt startlingly real. When Crooklyn premiered in 1994, she was only 9 years old, yet her portrayal of Troy Carmichael carried the emotional weight of the entire film. Troy was observant, stubborn, tender, and quietly resilient, a child absorbing adult conflict without fully understanding it. Harris did not perform innocence. She inhabited it. That authenticity is why more than 3 decades later, audiences still recognize her face and voice, even if they struggle to recall many other child performances from the same era. After Crooklyn, Harris briefly remained visible. She appeared in The Babysitter's Club 1995, and later in Spike Lee's He Got Game 1998. By Hollywood standards, the path seemed open. Yet the industry's attention narrowed instead of deepening. Casting calls slowed, roles became smaller, and expectations grew heavier. Being celebrated for a single childhood performance can become a trap, one that freezes identity at an age the actor can never return to. How many child stars are remembered for who they were rather than allowed to become who they are meant to be? For Harris, that question was not theoretical. It shaped a decisive break. Rather than chase diminishing opportunities, she chose a quieter, more deliberate reconstruction. Harris enrolled at Princeton University and graduated in 2007, redirecting her creativity toward education and music. This was not a retreat born of failure, but a conscious refusal to let nostalgia define her adulthood. She became a school teacher, learned multiple instruments, including piano and saxophone, and explored music collaboratively outside the spotlight. While tabloids often frame former child actors through scandal or collapse, Harris's story unfolded without headlines, a stability that paradoxically made her nearly invisible to the fame-driven culture she once belonged to. By 2026, Zelda Harris is 41 years old. She lives outside Hollywood's machinery, working as an educator and musician, with an estimated net worth of approximately $500,000, largely tied to her early film work. Visually, she no longer resembles the child audiences remember, yet her presence still carries recognition, not because she remained famous, but because she chose coherence over spectacle. Her legacy rests less in a long resume and more in a single, enduring performance that refuses to age. In a culture obsessed with then and now transformations, Harris represents a rare outcome, someone who stepped away before the industry could hollow her out. When viewers revisit Crooklyn today, they are not just watching a film, they are witnessing a moment that belonged to her briefly and that she had the courage to leave behind. Alfre Woodard. Alfre Woodard has never been an actress who relied on volume or spectacle. When Crooklyn arrived in 1994, she was already a seasoned performer in her early 40s, yet her portrayal of Carolyn Carmichael felt startlingly intimate. As the mother holding a fragile household together, Woodard delivered a performance built on restraint, tired eyes, measured discipline, and love expressed through responsibility rather than warmth. It was one of the most honest maternal portraits of 1990s cinema, anchoring the film's childhood perspective in adult consequence. Unlike many cast members whose fame peaked early, Woodard's career before and after Crooklyn reflects endurance shaped by resistance. She had already earned an Academy Award nomination for Cross Creek 1983 and critical praise for Passion Fish 1992, yet Hollywood rarely rewarded her consistency with equal opportunity. For decades, Black actresses of her generation were offered a narrow emotional corridor, caretakers, sufferers, or moral anchors supporting other people's stories. Woodard accepted none of those limitations passively. Each role required negotiation for complexity, dignity, and psychological truth, often without the visibility or pay afforded to her peers. Her professional life unfolded alongside a long marriage to writer and producer Roderick Spencer, whom she married in 1983. Stability, however, did not mean ease. Balancing film shoots, television work, activism, and family demanded discipline rather than comfort. Roles such as Miss Evers' Boys and later Clemency required her to inhabit moral trauma and historical cruelty for extended periods, leaving little separation between work and emotional exhaustion. By the 2000s and 2010s, her resume expanded into producing and political engagement, reflecting a career no longer confined to performance alone. She accumulated 4 Emmy Awards, a Golden Globe, and over 120 screen credits numbers that confirm longevity rather than celebrity flash. Unlike stars who faded when leading roles slowed, Woodard adjusted her orbit, choosing projects defined by purpose rather than prominence. Her activism, particularly around civil rights and humanitarian causes, became inseparable from her artistic identity. In 2026, Alfre Woodard is 74 years old. She remains selectively active in film and television, while continuing development work behind the scenes. With an estimated net worth of approximately $8 million, her success is measurable, but her influence is harder to quantify. Time has changed her appearance. Softer, features, slower movement, yet her presence still commands attention without raising its voice. Looking at Woodard then and now reveals a rare truth. Some careers are not built on reinvention, but on refusal to disappear, to simplify, or to perform pain without meaning. In an industry that often forgets its quiet pillars, Alfre Woodard remains standing not louder but deeper. Delroy Lindo. Delroy Lindo has never been an easy presence on screen, and that discomfort is precisely what made his work endure. When Crooklyn was released in 1994, Lindo was 42 years old and already respected in theater circles, yet still navigating an uneven film career. His portrayal of Woody Carmichael, volatile, wounded, emotionally distant, was not designed to be liked. It was designed to be honest. Woody's anger, pride, and fragility formed the unstable gravity at the center of the household, shaping the children's world long before they understood why. Behind that performance was an actor carrying parallel tensions. Born in London to Jamaican parents and raised between cultures, Lindo entered American acting as both insider and outsider. Despite acclaimed work in Malcolm X 1992 and Clocker's 1995, consistent security remained elusive. Film roles came in waves, followed by long stretches dominated by theater. During this period, his first marriage to Kathy Cohen ended strained by relocation, financial uncertainty, and the psychological pressure of pursuing legitimacy in an industry that often respected him without fully rewarding him. For years, Lindo occupied a frustrating space admired by critics, trusted by directors, yet rarely positioned as a centerpiece. Characters burdened by rage, regret, or moral corrosion became his terrain, sharpening his craft while narrowing perception. How long can an actor be praised for depth without being allowed to lead? That question quietly followed Lindo through the late 1990s and early 2000s, as supporting roles in films like Get Shorty and The Cider House Rules reinforced his reputation without transforming his standing. Rather than chase visibility at any cost, Lindo leaned into craft. Theater remained a stabilizing force, offering control, rigor, and dignity, absent from many film opportunities. He earned a Tony Award nomination and continued to refine performances that valued psychological truth over accessibility. This slow burn positioned him for one of the most striking late-career resurgences in recent memory. That resurgence arrived with Spike Lee's Da 5 Bloods 2020. As Paul, a haunted Vietnam veteran unraveling under decades of suppressed trauma, Lindo delivered a performance that critics described as volcanic. It earned multiple critics' awards and reopened conversations about his place in American cinema. The role did not reinvent him, it revealed what had been waiting. Subsequent work on The Good Fight and selective film projects confirmed that this was not a momentary correction, but a reframing. By 2026, Delroy Lindo is 74 years old. His appearance reflects time, gray hair, slower cadence, yet his screen presence remains formidable. He works selectively, mentors younger artists, and develops writing and directing projects rooted in immigrant and Windrush generation history. His estimated net worth is approximately $4 million, modest compared to peers with similar longevity, yet reflective of a career built on substance rather than speed. Looking at Lindo then and now, the transformation is not about fame gained late. It is about endurance validated. Crooklyn showed the damage a father can carry. Decades later, Lindo's career shows what it means to survive an industry without surrendering complexity, and to be finally seen without compromise. Chris Knowings. Chris Knowings entered Crooklyn at a formative age, carrying a responsibility far heavier than most child roles. In 1994, he was just 14 when he portrayed Nate Carmichael, the eldest sibling forced into premature adulthood by chaos he did not create. Nate was not loud or flashy. He was watchful, protective, and quietly burdened. Knowings conveyed that weight through stillness, a performance that suggested a boy learning how to absorb fear so others wouldn't have to. Decades later, that restraint remains one of the film's most affecting qualities. After Crooklyn, the industry did not offer a clear path forward. Brief appearances followed, including television work in the late 1990s, but momentum slowed rather than surged. Unlike peers whose struggles become public spectacle, Knowings' challenges were internal and cumulative: the pressure of being recognized early, the confusion of narrowing opportunities, and the realization that visibility does not equal security. Transitioning from a celebrated child performance to adult roles proved difficult in an ecosystem that often rewards novelty over growth. What happens when early responsibility becomes an identity the industry refuses to let you outgrow? For Knowings, that question prompted recalibration rather than retreat. Instead of chasing diminishing auditions, he pivoted toward a different creative lane, one built on continuity and purpose. In 2007, Knowings joined Sesame Street as Chris Robinson, a move that reframed his career around education and impact rather than celebrity. The shift proved stabilizing. Voice and character work allowed him to perform without the relentless scrutiny of the camera, offering longevity where on-screen roles had not. Over time, his work earned recognition, including 2 Daytime Emmy nominations, affirming that contribution does not require constant reinvention to be meaningful. As the years passed, Knowings became a familiar, trusted presence for new generations of children, many of whom never knew his earlier film work, yet absorbed his influence daily. This continuity contrasts sharply with the abruptness that often defines former child actors' careers. He chose a path that favored steadiness over spectacle, aligning his craft with service and education. In doing so, he quietly rewrote the narrative that early fame must either explode or collapse. By 2026, Chris Knowings is 46 years old. His appearance reflects time, a more grounded presence, a calmer cadence, but his professional identity is clearer than ever. With an estimated net worth of approximately $300,000, his success is modest by Hollywood metrics, yet significant in terms of sustainability and purpose. He remains active in voice acting and educational programming, choosing work that lasts over work that trends. Looking back, Knowings' journey reframes the then and now comparison. The boy who carried adult tension in Crooklyn became a man who built a career around reassurance and learning. His story suggests that survival in entertainment does not always look like a comeback. Sometimes it looks like finding the right place to stand and staying there long enough to matter. Isaiah Washington. Isaiah Washington entered Crooklyn in 1994, not as a star, but as a working actor finding his footing. At 31, he portrayed Vic, a neighborhood presence tied to the adult world surrounding the Carmichael family. The role was modest in screen time, yet important in texture, placing Washington within Spike Lee's ecosystem of morally complex, street-level realism. It did not launch him overnight, but it aligned him with a tradition of black male characters shaped by tension, ambition, and consequence rather than charm. Throughout the late 1990s, Washington's career moved forward unevenly. Appearances in films like Out of Sight, 1998, and Romeo Must Die, 2000, kept him visible without granting stability. That uncertainty followed him home. He married Janessa Marie Washington in 1996, and as work fluctuated, the strain of auditions, travel, and professional unpredictability weighed on family life. Acting success arrived in bursts, not as a steady climb, turning momentum into pressure instead of relief. His breakthrough came with television. In 2005, Washington was cast as Dr. Preston Burke on Grey's Anatomy, a role that finally offered prominence, financial security, and cultural reach. At its peak, the show drew over 20 million viewers per episode, placing Washington at the center of mainstream visibility. Yet the same platform magnified his missteps. In 2007, a public on-set controversy ended his tenure abruptly. Within weeks, a career built over more than a decade unraveled in public view. The years that followed were marked by recalibration rather than disappearance. Washington took on demanding independent projects, including Blue Caprice 2013, which required emotional exposure rather than redemption narratives. He returned to television in The 100, gradually rebuilding trust through work rather than apology tours. Away from Hollywood's center, he shifted toward authorship, directing, and international projects culminating in Corsicana. He also hosted a travel and cooking series, reframing his public identity around curiosity and cultural exchange instead of controversy. By 2026, Isaiah Washington is 63 years old. He remains active as an independent actor, director, and producer, often choosing projects that allow autonomy over approval. His estimated net worth stands at approximately $500,000, reflecting a career reshaped by interruption and recovery rather than uninterrupted ascent. Physically, time has softened his appearance. Professionally, it has sharpened his selectivity. Looking back, Washington's then and now story resists easy moral packaging. Crooklyn captured him before fame arrived, before collapse forced reflection. 3 decades later, his journey illustrates how success can be fragile, how failure can be public, and how survival sometimes requires stepping outside the system that once defined you. In an industry obsessed with clean arcs, Isaiah Washington's path remains complicated and unmistakably human. Frances Foster. Frances Foster carried nearly half a century of lived experience into Crooklyn, even though her screen time was brief. When the film was released in 1994, Foster was 70 years old, portraying Aunt Song with a gravity that could not be taught or manufactured. Her presence felt less like acting and more like memory itself, a reminder that elders often hold families together through silence, endurance, and moral authority rather than volume. In a film built on childhood perception, she represented time itself, watching from the corner of the room. Foster's journey to that moment was long and difficult. Born in 1924 in Yonkers, New York, she came of age during an era when black performers were systematically excluded from mainstream stages and screens. Her talent was never the issue, access was. Throughout the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, she worked primarily in theater where opportunity for black actors, though still limited, offered more creative dignity than film. She became a co-founder of the Negro Ensemble Company, an institution that reshaped American theater by creating space for black stories told with seriousness and craft. Yet even with that legacy, financial security remained elusive. Hollywood arrived late for Foster, and when it did, it rarely stayed. Appearances in films like Malcolm X and Clockers brought prestige but not stability. Supporting roles offered visibility without long-term protection, a pattern familiar to many actors of her generation. Her personal life unfolded alongside these pressures. She was married to Robert Stansfield Foster from 1941 until his death in 1977, a partnership formed during decades when survival itself demanded constant labor. Later, she married Morton Goldson, continuing to balance marriage with rehearsals, directing responsibilities, and touring productions well into her later years. What does it mean to keep working when rest has never truly been an option? By the time Crooklyn was made, Foster's health was already fragile, yet she continued accepting physically demanding work. The role of Aunt Song distilled everything she had lived through: resilience without bitterness, authority without dominance. Audiences may not have known her name, but they recognized her spirit. It was the kind of performance that does not seek attention, yet commands it. Frances Foster died on June 17, 1997, at the age of 73 from a cerebral hemorrhage. She was laid to rest in New York, the city that had both tested and shaped her. At the time of her death, her estimated net worth was approximately $300,000 earned through decades of acting, directing, and teaching, rather than commercial success. The number reflects an uncomfortable truth: cultural contribution and financial reward rarely align for pioneers. Looking back from 2026, Foster's then and now story has no reinvention arc, no late career comeback. Her face did not age on screen for decades because the industry did not make room for it. Yet her impact endures in institutions, performances, and the quiet authority she brought to Crooklyn. She represents a generation that built foundations others now stand on often without being fully seen. Vondie Curtis Hall. Vondie Curtis Hall arrived in Crooklyn with the kind of authority that does not announce itself. In 1994, he was 44 years old when he portrayed Uncle Brown, a figure of balance and restraint within the Carmichael family's orbit. Unlike louder personalities in the film, Uncle Brown mattered because he listened, observed, and intervened only when necessary. Curtis Hall brought a grounded calm to the role, embodying a generation of black men whose strength lay in steadiness rather than dominance. It was a performance that mirrored his real-life approach to the craft: deliberate, disciplined, and quietly resilient. Before Crooklyn, Curtis Hall had already built a respected resume across film, television, and theater. Roles in projects such as School Days and Roxanne established him as a reliable presence, yet true stardom never arrived in the conventional sense. Instead, his career unfolded horizontally rather than vertically, accumulating credibility without the insulation of celebrity. This pattern shaped a pivotal decision in the mid-1990s. As acting opportunities peaked, Curtis Hall chose to step behind the camera, directing films like Gridlocked 1997. The move carried risk. Transitioning from performer to filmmaker meant surrendering familiarity for uncertainty, often absorbing blame when projects struggled and defending choices without institutional protection. That transition coincided with marriage and family life, adding another layer of pressure. Time, finances, and creative confidence were constantly negotiated. For Curtis Hall, the answer came through endurance rather than immediate reward. Directing did not replace acting. It complicated it. He occupied an in-between space, no longer only a performer, not yet fully embraced as a filmmaker, a position that demanded patience and emotional stamina. Rather than retreat, Curtis Hall diversified. He returned to acting selectively, appearing in projects such as Chicago Hope, Daredevil, and Harriet, while continuing to direct television episodes across major networks. Teaching became another anchor. Joining the faculty at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, he committed to shaping future storytellers, extending his influence beyond screens and box office metrics. Education offered continuity and purpose, reinforcing the idea that legacy can be built through mentorship as much as through performance. By 2026, Vondie Curtis Hall is 76 years old. Physically, time is visible, slower movements, softer edges, yet his professional presence remains intact. He continues to balance academic work with selective screen appearances, choosing roles defined by substance rather than exposure. His estimated net worth is approximately $4 million earned steadily over decades through adaptability rather than headline moments. Looking back, Curtis Hall's then and now transformation is not about dramatic reinvention. It is about evolution. Crooklyn captured him as a moral stabilizer within a family. His career since has mirrored that function within the industry itself, supporting, guiding, and sustaining creative life without demanding the spotlight. In a culture that equates success with visibility, Vondie Curtis Hall stands as proof that longevity, purpose, and quiet authority can be achievements of their own. Joy Lee. Joy Lee occupied a unique and often uncomfortable position in Crooklyn. When the film was released in 1994, she was 32 years old, portraying Aunt Maxine outspoken, stylish, sharp-tongued, and emotionally alert. Aunt Maxine was not a nurturing figure in the traditional sense. She challenged illusions, cut through denial, and brought adult realism into the children's world. The performance felt natural because it aligned closely with Joy Lee's real-life presence, intelligent, direct, and unwilling to soften herself for approval. Yet the greatest tension in Joy Lee's career did not come from any single role. It came from proximity. As the sister of Spike Lee, her work was constantly measured against assumptions of nepotism rather than merit. Appearances in Do the Right Thing, Mo Better Blues, and Crooklyn provided visibility, but also suspicion. Every performance risked being dismissed as access rather than ability. Over time, that scrutiny created a quiet but persistent pressure, one that made remaining in front of the camera feel less like opportunity and more like exposure. Rather than compete with expectations she could not control, Lee began shifting her creative center of gravity. Acting became selective. Writing and producing grew more central. She co-wrote Crooklyn, embedding personal memory into the script, and increasingly focused on shaping stories from behind the scenes. This transition required relinquishing a certain kind of recognition. In an industry that rewards faces more than voices, stepping back meant accepting reduced visibility. How many artists are willing to trade being seen for being heard on their own terms? For Joy Lee, that trade-off became a form of protection. Throughout the late 1990s and 2000s, she continued contributing to independent film documentaries and culturally rooted projects that favored control over scale. Occasional acting appearances, such as in Summer of Sam and Coffee and Cigarettes, reinforced that she had not disappeared, she had recalibrated. Unlike peers who chased momentum, Lee prioritized authorship, choosing environments where her ideas mattered more than her surname. This quieter path offered longevity without the emotional cost of constant comparison. By 2026, Joy Lee is 64 years old. Time has softened her appearance but clarified her role within cinema. She remains active as a producer and writer, working steadily rather than spectacularly. Her estimated net worth is approximately $1.5 million, accumulated through consistent creative labor rather than blockbuster association. The number reflects a career defined by independence, not excess. Looking at Joy Lee then and now challenges the surface logic of fame. Her journey suggests that survival in the arts does not always mean pushing forward into brighter lights. Sometimes it means stepping sideways, preserving voice dignity and authorship when the spotlight becomes distorting. In Crooklyn, Aunt Maxine spoke uncomfortable truths. Decades later, Joy Lee's career embodies the same principle: clarity over applause and control over noise. Spike Lee. Spike Lee was already a cultural lightning rod when Crooklyn premiered in 1994, yet the film marked one of the most personal turns of his career. At 37 years old, Lee was no longer simply chronicling social conflict, he was reconstructing memory. By inserting himself on screen as Snuffy while also writing and directing the film, he collapsed the distance between creator and subject. Crooklyn was not designed to provoke outrage or debate. It was an act of reflection, revisiting a Black childhood shaped by love, instability, discipline, and survival. That shift revealed a quieter courage beneath his confrontational reputation. The years surrounding Crooklyn were professionally intense. Coming off Do the Right Thing and Malcolm X Lee faced an industry both dependent on his talent and wary of his politics. Studios questioned his tone, critics accused him of being inflammatory, and funding often came with resistance rather than trust. That pressure followed him into his personal life. He married Tanya Lewis Lee in 1993, just 1 year before Crooklyn's release, and immediately entered a period defined by relentless production schedules. Directing, producing, teaching, and public speaking left little room for stillness. The marriage endured, but it did so within constant motion where personal time often yielded to deadlines and controversy. Throughout the late 1990s and 2000s, Lee's output remained prolific but unevenly received. Films like Bamboozled were dismissed on release only to be reassessed years later as prophetic. Others sparked backlash that reignited debates he had been navigating since the 1980s. Yet, retreat was never part of his vocabulary. Lee adapted by expanding his influence. He founded 40 Acres and A Mule Filmworks, mentored younger filmmakers, and became a professor at NYU, shaping the next generation of storytellers. His Oscar win for Black Klansman 2018 did not soften his stance. It amplified it. The recognition validated longevity, not compliance. Even in his 60s, Lee continued confronting race power and memory with the same urgency that once made studios nervous. By 2026, Spike Lee is 69 years old. Physically, time shows slower steps, quieter moments, but creatively his edge remains intact. With an estimated net worth of approximately $60 million, his success is undeniable, yet it came without peace or consensus. He remains active as a filmmaker, producer, educator, and cultural critic, still willing to absorb backlash in exchange for honesty. Looking back, Spike Lee's then and now transformation is not about mellowing with age. It is about accumulation. Crooklyn captured him looking backward with tenderness. The decades since show a man who never stopped pushing forward. His face has changed. His stature has grown, but the engine remains the same, a refusal to be comfortable in silence, and an insistence that memory, especially Black memory, deserves to be told without permission. 32 years later, Crooklyn no longer feels like a film frozen in childhood. It feels like a mirror held up to time itself. Some faces endured, some faded quietly, and some never had the chance to grow old at all. The cast's journeys reveal an uncomfortable truth: talent does not guarantee protection, longevity, or fairness, especially for Black artists navigating an unforgiving industry. As viewers, we celebrate nostalgia, but do we fully reckon with what happened after the credits rolled? So here's the question we leave you with on Legends of Black Excellence. When we say we honor Black legacy, are we honoring only the memories or the lives that followed them?